G'day, Aisha Mahari here. With what is, I think, a very important message for people with codependency, exes of those with BPD, and also which marks another milestone on the channel here, my 700th video. 700th video in current total videos on the channel, but really something like about my 1,400th video, maybe all told for this channel, because some were taken down, they'll be repurposed, live stream clips and such. And I just really hope that this will be helpful. The double bind in a relationship with somebody with borderline personality, especially untreated. Episodes that continue throughout the relationship, and things that go awry, and the misunderstandings, and the way that they blame you and externalize things out onto you. The double bind is the walking on the eggshells, but knowing that something is so off, or coming to realize that, wanting the relationship to work out so badly, and for many reasons, some obvious reasons, and some reasons that have to do with codependency, and the way that people are externalizing out their needs, trying to get needs met, but it doesn't really work well that way, and it doesn't especially work with people with BPD. So this double bind of you're walking on the eggshells, but you have these feelings, you're having an experience, you're having many experiences within a relationship with somebody with BPD that are very painful. That even though many people with BPD, a lot of the time, are projecting things and unconsciously, like not aware of it, projecting their own issues out, their own woundedness and everything from their childhoods out onto you, you're still standing there hearing it. And then, more to the point, people with codependency take it in personally. And this whole idea of being, quote, the bad guy, and how the person with BPD, whether it's, a man with BPD with a woman, or a man with a woman with BPD, it's so painful. And there's something, and I'm working on several things right now, because I think I'm going to get closer to, I don't know if I should say pioneering, but really coming up with something that I hope will be much more helpful in some of the arenas of the rumination, to some degree cognitive dissonance. But what is this almost suspended animation place that people after BPD relationship breakup, or with the on and off again, but the relationship's broken up, and whether it's for a day or months or longer, well, there's this, people are in this, exes are in this place of a lot of stealth reverse hoovering, which is, going and looking at their social media, etc. Reverse hoovering in many other ways, and or really wanting and waiting to be hoovered. And not all people with BPD do hoover. So not every single person who's an ex wanting a hoover or reverse hoovering is going to meet with success in the sense of what that effort is about. But make no mistake about it, stealth hoovering, reverse hoovering, or allowing yourself to be hoovered is not going to bring you a solution. It's not going to bring you the closure that you may want. And more importantly, the risk for so many exes of someone with BPD is that when you're still tied into trying to find the closure, wanting to talk to them, wanting to get hoovered or hoover them, or for this, quote, closure, unquote, which is a really big issue, but it's not going to come, especially from the untreated borderline. It's not going to come from the cluster B individual, the X. So it's a slippery slope to wanting a do-over. And I think that a lot of people with codependency, in the agony of it all, when the relationship is ruptured, the BPD relationship breakup has happened, but it's far from over one way or another, at least emotionally for you. And for many people, they will recycle back into the relationships, which does not work out. So with all of this going on, that double bind again, walking on the eggshells versus how hurt you're getting continuously, and then after the relationship breakup, the pain and the agony and the rumination and the cognitive dissonance and much, much more, because of the nature of the unhealthy bond in this situation. So that's a primary thing at the core of all this for people after the BPD relationship breakup and all of these other difficulties that are going on. And people are, I mean, so incredibly hurt. In working with clients, it's just the same points of people suffering in very different individual ways are driven home to me. And also, comments on the channel, people in the live streams. In working with people, I'm striving very much, and I do with, each individual client, to kind of hone in more on where are the connectors, what's going on, what needs to be looked at in codependency recovery that can help with the relationship recovery as well. So the double bind of walking on eggshells versus that you need to understand more, that you need and want them to take accountability. Because people, what's happening in this struggle, which maybe everybody isn't conscious of when the relationship is still going on, even if it's having a lot of, off and on difficulties, the roller coaster of it all, is that no matter how much you walk on the eggshells, each eggshell you step on is either cracking in that moment or will crack in moments or hours or a day or a week or a month from now. Because you can't walk on eggshells without squishing them. Can't walk on eggshells without them cracking more. And so in this analogy then, the eggshells, you're walking on them in bare feet. And there's a sharpness there. And so every time one crack smashes under your feet, that really hurts. And that's I'm saying that right now as having the eggshell that, is maybe somewhat, sharp and hurting the underside of your feet. The analogy is what that's really doing to you emotionally, and the fact that people really can't walk on eggshells. People are trying to walk on the eggshells. People might even think they're rather skilled at walking on the eggshells, but going back to the literality of it, how can you really be walking on the eggshells when they would all be smashing underneath your feet? Nature of eggshells, right? But this is what happens emotionally in these relationships as well with people with BPD. Because that double bind of you hurt, they don't take in your love, they don't attach to you, they don't see you, you're trying to get seen, you need to be seen and heard, you need validation also. And people with codependency need a little more than average, but it's not the same as people with BPD. So this double bind of trying to walk on the eggshells and think that that can be successful, because really, frankly, it just never is. But people try so hard. And then you get hurt so much. And then no matter what you do when an eggshell has been smashed to the point where the person with BPD is going to not only hurt you, but what's going to happen is it sets off the borderline. That doesn't mean you're responsible for a trigger. There's still repetition compulsion cycles, because all of borderline triggered emotional dysregulation is something that happened to them in young childhood one way or the other. So, and this is why they have splitting as the major defense. But the bottom line is, when you're on the other side now, when you're an ex, if it's new or if it's been a longer time, but for whatever reason, you're still ruminating, you're still hurting. Many people want closure, even if you got closure from a cluster B. These relationships are just so out of the quote ordinary unquote of other types of relationships that it really wouldn't be the answer that you think it would be. So closure is important, but that you need to find in your own healing recovery journey in therapy. I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you. I've seen this with client after client over 30 plus years, and the devastation of it all. And the stealth reverse social media hoovers, the reverse hoovers. Maybe, there's different apps and things out there now that you can kind of know what's going on in someone's life a whole lot more than is really healthy for anybody. That becomes something that a lot of people with codependency or the excess of people with BPD might do, that increases what you can kind of quote know unquote about them or what they're up to, as you're trying to assess whether or not you're going to be hoovered. What are they doing? Just how much has the average person with untreated BPD lied to you? And yet, the double bind after trying to walk on the eggshells and needing to get, your needs met in the relationship, validation, understanding, all the mutuality and reciprocity that's lacking, and that people with codependency doubling down on. And then people are in these really painful, difficult places, and often for very long periods of time. Codependency takes a long time to recover from, fully, but it's good to get a good start at that work and recovery. The relationship recovery, for some people, it goes a little quicker than others. Nobody recovers in 2 months or 4 months or 6 months. And if they think they have, they're kidding themselves. And more often than not, they end up jumping, into like more dating and ending up needing another cluster B and compounding the pain. If you're in a world of hurt, you're the ex or it's on off again, or in any relationship type with somebody with BPD and especially untreated, that everything that you need and want right now, you're not going to get it from the person with BPD, whether you can get their attention again or reverse Hoover or get Hoovered or not. And B, it's like seeking the path back to recycle a relationship, which many people do. It's like seeking a path back to, quote, communicate with the ex with BPD when that never worked in the first place in the relationship. And so the question as a codependent who may well be either recycling relationships on and off with the same person with BPD, or you are in a world of hurt of wanting to have that conversation that you think would bring you closure, or that slippery slope of wanting that might mean you want to try again. All I can really say is, you need to get into therapy, you need to work really hard on this, because you're already in a world of hurt, and all that can happen if you do try to have that conversation, for the closure, you're just gonna end up in a bigger world of hurt. So, a lot of people with codependency right now, exes of those with BPD in whatever stages, like I said, in situations ongoing or not, are definitely not aware of the ways, with all due respect, not aware of the ways to really help yourself to begin to move through this in a healing and recovering way versus replicating it again. And that goes to the repetition compulsion cycles and codependency that people need to learn more about and understand more about in therapy. And it goes to the reason why people are driven, can't get out of the unhealthy bond, and are driven to want to repeat it, to want to repeat it, to want to repeat it. And this is what I want you to hear clearly today, that all the being driven to want to repeat it, even if you're in denial about that, or you'd say, no, I'm positive I don't want him or her back. People can feel positive about a lot intellectually that your emotional landscape hasn't caught up to. And a lot of people, as much as you're hurting, you're not really in tune with your feelings. So it just becomes this vicious cycle of agony. And the bottom line is, there isn't going to be a really quick solution. And that's what I think people are so understandably emotionally desperate and distraught about. You want somehow to get them to take responsibility and know how they hurt you, or can't we do this again? If only they would understand this or that, maybe it could work. This is where people with codependency are in their own repetition compulsion cycles, not consciously. And you, if you have codependency, are setting yourself up unknowingly, not on purpose, in having anything to do with the borderline X, or wanting to be hoovered or reverse hoovering, etc. That's just going to hurt you even more. And people might realize that, they might not realize that, because there's always this false hope, which is much more than that, which I work with clients, and I might say more about here. It's a false hope. It's that want, that need, that desire, and a lot of other words probably would go with that people would say is the reason why they want another chance or another conversation that leads to another chance with a person with BPD. Because I think people know from your own experience in a relationship with the person that you were in a relationship with BPD that you can't talk to them. You're used to doing that sort of, limbo, impossible, walking on the eggshells that you're cracking and smashing, and you can't walk on the eggshells. You're not going to get closure from them. And even if you got some modicum of closure from an ex with BPD, it wouldn't make everything okay. People think that, right? That's one of the illusions that codependents hold about these situations and the woundedness that you're living with and facing and why, and more to the point, where that goes back to in your childhood and what you need therapy to learn more about to go through a process. These type of processes, I know how I work with clients, that really are the only way toward understanding yourself better, creating that healthy relationship to and with yourself. All of those are just two things, but all of these steps that I'm talking about, that people need to get into therapy to heal and recover from these relationships and from codependency and from all these connectors about why you are codependent in the first place, adverse childhood response, and why you are repeating repetition compulsion cycles that only see you get more and more hurt. And sometimes you get intermittent reinforcement, and sometimes it's wonderful, or it was, and then you're trying to get back to the wonderful, but it's never going to be wonderful again. But people think it might be, so people are really being emotionally driven while trying to rev up logic to understand that isn't going to help you, because trying to be logical about all that you're not aware of in your emotional landscape, other than you hurt, and then that drives the codependent repetition compulsion for, I've got to talk to them again, I've got to try again, there needs to be closure, they have to apologize, they have to understand what they did to me, I'm not the bad guy, quote, or the bad woman, I'm not the one who did this, why don't they get it? This is a big piece, whether lots of people are consciously aware of it, but this is a huge driving force that is, the driver of the unhealthy bond connection still for codependence. It's a driver of cognitive dissonance. It's a driver of rumination, because people with codependence, I want to say again to remind you, you need to get into therapy and you need to learn why it's so hard for you to focus on you, because you can't stop focusing on them. And it doesn't matter how many clients I've worked with, how many different ways they say things that have similarities to them, yes, in each individual's experience. This double bind, these relationships are unconscious setups from the beginning for both the person with BPD and the codependent in coming together in these unhealthy bonds. How are you going to break out of that unhealthy bond? Well, I'm here just as a voice of reason to say, which I think people know from time to time but deny, you can't continue the way that you were. But there's still the hope you can. And that denial is very painful, and you can get really hurt if you recycle back to relationship. But so the double bind of the walking on the eggshells and the wanting them back, or the wanting closure in the guise of probably wanting a do-over for more people than not, and you might not be consciously aware of that. All of this is what is lacking, and I mean that with all due respect. All of this is people with codependency having had a taste of, in the idealization, mirroring, and people-pleasing phase of the person with BPD, or if you want to call it love bombing, it isn't, because they don't know love from Adam, untreated people with BPD. But in that initial idealization phase, that's what everybody is still chasing. No matter how you parse it, no matter how you describe it, no matter how you think about it, that's what you want back. Because you need that so badly. You do. Human beings do need validation and to be seen and heard. But what I really hope you can hear today is, even when it feels impossible, and even when I'm working with clients in the beginning, nothing magically changes right away. It's not easy work. It's a process. It will lead you where you want to go, where you need to be, which is understanding yourself more, knowing more about yourself, understanding about what happened, which can happen, and you can learn in therapy, but not from the cluster B. And so the double bind really is the larger double bind within the smaller double binds. You are wanting back those feelings that you had. Whether it has to do with physical intimacy or not, more to the point, it's more emotional than that as well. People want those feelings back. And this is what you are now abandoning yourself and increasing your own suffering on top of what's happened to you in a relationship with somebody with BPD or even a narcissist. You are in a repetition compulsion codependent cycle that is working totally against you. So even in efforts, when I'm working with clients, when I begin working with clients, even in the efforts to start to progress and do the work of healing and recovery, we need to also work on the sabotage of, but I need those feelings back, which is often not in the consciousness of people with codependence who are exes of those with BPD. You might say it, clients say it to me a lot, people will express it, but I don't think people are really truly as consciously aware of what that means as they need to become. So the double bind, which is the trying to walk on the eggshells, and then after the breakup or the ghosting or the on off, the double bind is still trying to walk on the eggshells, self abandonment. So there's really a third thing in the double bind. And the reality that you're not ever going to get the feelings back from this person that you got initially. And that's a key indicator, and that there's something there you need to heal within yourself. But people keep looking to the borderline. They keep worrying about what they think about them and the narratives that they'll tell, which of course will be distorted and will be against you because they're, again, not to excuse it, they're protecting themselves. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope it gives you food for thought. And I would also just like to say that please try to look at the reality of you're not consciously doing it, but the drive and your need to be seen and heard and validated, and to in codependent repetition cycles of externalizing things out to try to meet your needs, which you learned in childhood somewhere. You got to know that this world of hurt, it's turning into therapy in a process that isn't easy to begin with. That's your way forward. And anything else you try to do, you're going to increase your own suffering. And you might have help if you do, in fact, get a Hoover or reverse Hoover and have more contact with the borderline X. Make no mistake about it, as impossible as it feels, and I feel for you out there. This is not no judgment. It's me empathizing as I work with clients and I hear this up close and personal, and I see people suffering. You really need to go full no contact. And yes, for a lot of people, they'll say, but I just can't. I just can't. I'm not ready to. I understand that. And when I'm working with clients, and I want to say it to you right now, too, if you're just listening to this, that there is a time when it feels impossible and you may not be able to do it. But then you need to get in therapy because you need to be processing your way to being able to do that for yourself. Because it is one of the larger stepping stones in surviving a BPD relationship breakup, and not just surviving first and then working in healing and recovery to become a thriver and to be able to actually move on. And so much of that being actually able to move on, it has nothing to do with the X with BPD. It has nothing to do with your codependent repetition compulsion cycles right now, the rumination, the need for closure, the cognitive dissonance. No, it's something deeper inside of you that you need to understand better, that you need to heal, that you need to go back somewhere in your childhood and find in a therapeutic process. This is the way forward. And so your double bind now is you want back those feelings. You want that person back that gave you the feelings that isn't really who the borderline was or is. And you want those feelings back. And that's what's at the core of what is the double bind after the original double bind, which is this is hurting me. I can't stand this. I need and want him back. But many people know I need and want him back. But I can't. I won't survive it again. And you know what it is? It's those feelings that you need to get in your own healing and recovery to be able to have within yourself as an independent person. The being seen, the being heard, the being validated, the sense of self-worth that you're getting, that you got some satiation of, through the borderline and the idealization, more to the point, this is your double bind now. How do you at least realize, if not let go of yet, what you experienced in idealization, to get into a process of healing recovery, to work your way through and past that, to be able to give yourself what it is that you're so still desiring from the borderline X. And maybe it hasn't been in your conscious awareness this way. I hope the way that I put this will help people to realize you need to get into a therapeutic process of healing, because anything short of that is going to keep you in a different kind of double bind, and it's an impossible double bind, because you're never going to get the original feelings of being seen, what you thought was being seen, heard, and validated in the idealization from the borderline. And they were not who you thought they were, and they are never going to be who you thought they were, at least not in any time that can matter in your life that you're in. And of course, people do. But if you really are ready to make a choice that you don't know how it's going to unfold, and you might not understand, but please understand the choice, especially if you want to work with me, if I resonate with you, that you're going to be making is the choice to learn to understand and heal from what you're looking for from a borderline or an X that you absolutely will never get, and what you can find in your own healing and recovery process for yourself that brings massive relief and so much newness to your life, so much change and healing, and a whole new way to go forward. Take care.